Thank you for joining me on the Rice Pudding Project. All right. I know you, but just for the audience, give me a little bit of a background about yourself.
Sure. I am Will Hutson. I am a dad of 3 great kids, married, entrepreneur, worked in the creative services industry for just about 15, 16 years. Okay. Have my own agency.
What's it called?
LMTD.
Short for?
Log mean thermal differential, obviously.
I just thought it was limited, but okay.
Yeah, it's a physics equation. I don't know. You know, it was 2012. Vowels were very passé. Okay. And I liked the idea of what that physics equation represented, which is the transfer of heat between 2 objects. And so if you look at what social and digital was representing, it was the layer between brands and their audiences, celebrities and their fans. And I was like, what if we build a business just focused on that, which still in 2012 was a revolutionary idea.
See, that is so much cooler than the reason why I called this the Rice Pudding Project.
Okay.
Okay. So 3 kids, happily married?
Yeah, man. Okay. Yeah. I would tell you.
You would tell me if you want to.
I would tell you. I'd put it on a podcast. I think that's the best way to resolve marital.
I've seen people do worse. Like they broadcast it on TV commercials. I'm getting divorced.
Oh,
and they were serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Got some big fish to fry
the
there.
The marriage didn't last there.
No.
They had some issues. Is it your company does exactly?
Yeah, we really try to help larger businesses and organizations solve complex problems using social, digital, any kind of emerging media or platform. So we've been building, a variety of AI agents and bots for the last couple of years for brands. We have helped other companies rebuild their CRM. Anything that touches social or digital as a way to solve a business or organizational problem. We like solving problems that way.
And you've been working with AI for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So not just recently.
Yeah.
It seems like now it's the buzzword.
Well, I think a lot of people probably don't realize how close that they've been to AI for even longer than that. I mean,
how so?
If you work with a lot of different platforms to store your documents in the cloud, a lot of the optimization, a lot of the work and the organization around cloud was powered and had adjacencies to AI. If you were working off of third-party CRM tools or a variety of like EDM or emailing tools, a lot of those platforms used AI to scale. Like if you were sending CRM emails out, they wouldn't just blast all the emails in one shot. They would send them in pulses, and they would learn over time the best way to get around spam filters. Those were all rules and contextualized kind of patterns that they learned over time, and that was AI. This is what, a lot of really smart people have been doing for a long time. It's just, I think that over the last 24, 36 months, we've seen standalone kind of interfaces that allow us to have conversations and allow us to learn things in the way that we've been learning, kind of in a more decentralized way.
So AI doesn't scare you?
I mean, that's like saying, does nuclear scare me?
Yes.
It was really funny. I was watching the news this morning and I went from CNN to Bloomberg.
Okay.
And on CNN, they were like talking about all of the different aspects of, if the war and things going on between countries could escalate into nuclear tensions. And then I went to Bloomberg and they were like, investing in nuclear energy is the time. Now is the moment. This is what's going on. I was like, this is crazy. And I just went back and forth between the channels.
Okay.
Because on one hand, nuclear is a boogeyman for war. And on the other hand, when we look at AI, nuclear is like unlimited energy. It gives us unlimited compute. It gives us unlimited upside with AI. So I think with any of these things, we have to kind of look at like the barbell effect, like, everything in the middle makes sense. And then on the ends, everything gets really extreme. It gets really, really good, and it can get really, really bad. And you just hope that we have really smart leaders and we have really active and involved communities, and we have fair and open and decentralized media so people talk about things in responsible ways.
That's hoping for a lot of...
It's a lot, but we've gotten this far, and I think if we look at post-World War II, the way we looked at nuclear energy and nuclear power, I think a lot of those same conversations need to be had around AI. I actually mean it earnestly. I know you meant the question as a more of an open-ended, what do you think about AI? But and does it worry me? But I think if we look at how we as humans looked at nuclear, what we did right and what we did wrong, I think we could learn a lot and we could apply that to AI.
Because I think what the regular response is, or the most common response is, AI is taking our jobs. Especially in creative work, whether it's production, commercials. Like I have production companies, producers, directors, photographers, all freaking out saying, I'm seeing now every one of every 4 commercials on TV is made by AI. Voiceovers now are using AI. This and that is AI. Photographers are AI. So we're losing jobs. Like we need to stop this. But you can't stop this. Totally. So then. That's the freaky thing.
Generally, technology and technological advancements are not a net negative. Generally speaking, they're a net positive. Our reaction to them can be really polarizing, and I think you're seeing one side of the polarization. Yeah. But that's like saying, cell phones are going to kill the media industry. It's like, if you look at the social media platforms, media has never been bigger. Which I think social media platforms are now being regulated like media. So there's a case to be made that they are part of the media industry, social media. So
a lot of people get the information from there.
Yeah. And so I strongly believe that technology in that case has been accretive. No. Is the New York Times as influential today as it was 10 years ago? Probably not. Is the Washington Post? Definitely not. Is CNN? Absolutely not. But
that's not necessarily a bad thing.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think more people are clued in and more people are paying attention. So I think in the creative industries, AI is an accretive thing. And I think, what AI will never do is give people optionality. And that's ultimately, when you're in the creative services realm, when you're in the professional services realm, you're giving your clients deep optionality. And if you're not selling optionality, if you're just selling the subjective piece of work, then you're going to be in a really dangerous place, because the client can just give feedback or just criticize the work. Yeah. It's not that you're doing anything wrong or you're the wrong team. It's that I don't like the work. If you are selling and you're positioning what you're doing as a value-added service that gives them optionality from something that they would do internally, why? Everybody told me during COVID, 2 things were going to disrupt agencies. One, it was going to be going hybrid, and that was going to destroy agencies. Agencies have come out of it, I think, stronger, much stronger, actually. And 2, that everybody was going to take in-housing. In-housing was going to take stuff by storm. Meaning they were going to build their bench of creative services internally.
Because financially it makes sense. In some
financially
ways.
It can make sense if you have a tremendous amount
of work. Yeah.
I mean, there are some really famous North American brands. Gap did a lot of in-housing. And Pepsi famously did a bunch of in-housing, and they produced one of the worst commercials of all time. And that was an in-house creative director, the whole sharing the Pepsi in the middle of a protest. And it was tone deaf, it was off. So take away the subjectivity, it's really hard to fire someone you share the water cooler and a toilet with.
And be subjected to them and give them feedback. And
that's right. That's right. And so that's optionality.
Yeah.
And so if you boil that down, you want a third party involved in your decision making. You want a third party involved in the creation of that, whether or not they're using, briefs or they're using different prompts to generate AI powered work. Doesn't matter. What matters is you want optionality. Okay. And I think more people should look at the agency world through that lens. Yeah. I mean, I know you work in production, for instance. Yeah. Not every big agency here carries a full-time production team anymore.
It's got less and less.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then the people will blame that on AI.
Okay, fine. But is your business getting less and less?
No, not necessarily. It's just you have to adapt to it. Yeah, it's how you cope with the different waves that come.
I think it's about who's going to own the risk, right? And so in this case, you're a freelancer, you're owning your own risk, and in the case of an agency, you're asking the agency to take the risk, not the in-house team. Yeah. And so that optionality is really powerful. It also allows for incredibly deep subject matter diversification. So someone can go through and go really deep on a topic that they wouldn't normally go deep on. Yeah. We do a ton in healthcare. We do a lot of work with government clients. government is really, 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 really specialized. The amount of protocol that we deal with when we have to, prepare work for a media office. We know how to work with all the different media offices in the GCC before they send any content out and release content.
Yeah.
That's really, really specialized.
Yeah. So then that can't be done by AI. So you're saying
not only can that not be done by AI, that can't be done in-house, that builds the moat, is that experience.
Yeah.
And so the odds of someone being able to, and look, the other thing is internally, on the client side, managing up, you can't do that through AI. You're not going to be able to sit with the CFO and break down the CFO. There's no way a CFO can prompt their way into understanding the KPIs or the objectives of a campaign, right? They might be able to understand what is an objective or how do KPIs work. Yeah. And I think that has been, again, net benefit is you're seeing people go through in procurement departments, you're seeing people go through in financial suites and offices and saying, oh, we want more from our agencies, we want more from our partners, because they're using different AIs to kind of understand what does success look like or how should they benchmark better. But full-on replacement, I don't see that. I think it's enhancement.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What is it about, like, you're very into AI. So what is it that excites you or interests you about it?
Look, I am a very deep believer in the people on my team, and I'm a very deep believer in
you have a big team, right? I remember you saying how many?
Yeah, we're about 50 people today, full time.
Hybrid,
but UAE.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like we're all getting together tomorrow. That's why we're trying to get in today.
Gotcha.
And for our offsite, and we're planning the next 6 months. And we're going to get better at getting together more often. That is something that's a blind spot. But look, if I sit back and I really think about the differentiators in my business, it's my people. If I sit back, it's our culture. It's what I bring to the table. I don't look, I don't sound, I don't act like a lot of the agency CEOs in the region.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's cost me a lot, right? There's been a lot of business that I sit with them and immediately they're like, oh, we don't think you're going to get the insights. We don't think you're going to have the regional expertise. You know? I remember we were almost acquired by one of the big five holding companies, and the corp dev, biz dev guy leading the deal, he had relocated 6 months before from the UK. I had been here 5 years, and they were really hot on us. The CEO really wanted to buy us. And he was like, I just don't think he's going to be successful in the region. And it was like 7 years later, like we've tripled the company. Like we've been through COVID, we've done 50 million US in sales. Like it's been a smashing success. Yeah. But because
but if you understood the region, you might have done it
a little bit better. Yeah. And I'm sure he's had a great career. And no, I'm serious. He's middle management for somebody. And look, in those situations, I have to do what's best for me and my culture. So to answer your question, the reason I get passionate about AI is because if anybody's going to disrupt my business, I want it to be me. Okay. And if anybody is going to double and triple down on my team and my culture, it's going to be me through AI. And I have to be incredibly dialed in on the context of what makes us different, what excites our clients, what works in this region, what doesn't. And so we've been undertaking kind of a process over the last year to really build like our OS, like what is our operating system of our business. Okay. And so that looks at automation, that looks at briefing, that looks at client interaction and engagement. My North Star is my client can send me a voice note and we can reply back in that voice note and the brief is all broken down and they're like, is this what you want? And they say yes. And then the middle and back office just breaks it into a million pieces and is going. So for me, AI doubles and triples down. It accentuates my biggest advantage, which is my people and my culture.
You started your company was it 2012?
Yeah.
And how many of you was there?
Three.
And now you have 50. Yeah. That's a good growth, considering you don't know the market. What drives you? Because you're very driven.
Sure.
What is your driving source?
I would say, ultimately, I'm wanting to have a life that is interesting, that's exciting. As I said, I really believe in our culture and our people. And I'm also really passionate about being a parent, being an active partner with my wife. And so how do I get that lifestyle figured out? I have to have a business that really has a robust leadership team. It's got a lot of resilience. It doesn't need me to sit on top of it and make every decision. And I remember when I first would meet CEOs in the region, and I'd always go in and they were always signing checks. Yeah, what's going on? How are you? Yeah, good to see you. Always signing checks. They just couldn't get away from the minutia of it. I mean, some of the biggest CEOs that we knew. I mean, and just constantly, you know.
They're always interrupted with the CFO. They need to sign something, and they're like, okay, and then they give you a few minutes of time, but it's never fully your time.
Never fully. Yeah. And so it's like, what are the decisions I need to make? And so for me, I think that's the quest to get a business that at least is turning over 25, 30 million US instead of 5, 6, 7 million US. I think that's being in multiple markets so that if one market goes sideways, and I think that gives me the ability to create really ambitious goals and targets for my senior leaders in the business, and then also for my average employee. I would love it if my average employee's salary could be over 100,000 US a year. I think that would be the coolest thing.
The employees would like that as well.
Of course. And I'm not the type of, I mean, we're at 50 and I've got a leadership team of 7. That's very unusual, right? I'm not top heavy.
Yeah.
We have a very wide kind of organizational structure, and we cover a lot of areas, as you can see.
Because a lot of agencies are super top heavy.
Super top heavy.
CEO, MD, then you have a GM, and I never understood why you need a GM and an MD, but that's not. And then you have the growth officer, and you have.
It always. I like to say you walk into some agency groups, and it's all the guys with Rolexes, and I think there was a belief for a long time that if one person left, a relationship would leave.
Yeah.
And so I think we kind of got over that in 17, 18. You saw a lot of the reorganization in the agency groups. And you've seen the older generation really, really leave the day-to-day of all the agency groups.
But I think the people who made that myth were the ones who were the ones that had the relationships and wanted to feel,
of course,
needed.
Of course. Yeah. And that's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Look, I think as that changes, and as people also look regionally, my clients didn't just want every single person that I employ to be on my payroll and to be visited with me. They wanted me to be in an office and to have my thumb on them. Now they're very okay with hybrid. Now I'm having clients say, like, I think you need to look at having a back office somewhere else.
Is that because it'll be cheaper for them, or just because they think it'll be faster?
I think both. Both. Money's always a consideration, but we're pretty aggressive with our pricing.
Okay.
And also, as an American, like with my tax status, I don't take a ton of money out of the business. I leave the money in the business to let the business grow. And I'm incentivized to build the business to be as big as it is. And then if I exit someday, to have that be the event where I make money. So from a day-to-day basis, we really, really reinvest. And we really try to focus that on the team. So yeah, I think the clients want to be able to scale down and scale up quicker, and to have that kind of on demand.
Gotcha.
And I think they also really want the ability to understand the pricing. I think that there's a little bit of black box when it comes to rate cards and things like that. And we're pretty transparent with our clients.
As an American, where did you grow up? In America?
I did.
Whereabouts?
So I didn't leave the United States. I think I went to Canada for the first time, and like most Americans, I didn't even have my passport until I was 24.
This is very common, by the way. I noticed that when I went to America.
Yeah.
And it's not, and people will be like, "Oh, Americans are ignorant, they don't get to travel." I don't think that's the case. I think America is so big, and there's so much you can do.
Yes.
Like, because you can do so much.
Yes.
Why? Where would you like? Honestly, because like you can go Disneyland, Disney World. Okay, you can go to Big Bear. You can go skiing. You can go everything. You can go beaches. So like,
even where I'm from Florida.
Have you been to the 50?
No, I have not been to all 50 states. Yeah, I haven't. So I haven't been to the Dakotas. There's some spots in the U.S. I'd like to go, and and of course there's like national parks there and things like that. But
Yosemite and things like that.
So yeah, I hadn't left the U.S. I went to Canada, I think, when I was 24. And,
Niagara Falls?
No, Montreal. Yeah, and was like a work trip and like a prize. You did well at work. Congratulations, you're going on you're top 100 salespeople. Go to Montreal. Congratulations. And so that was a fun trip, and it was just one of those things where I was like, oh, this is cool. This is seeing the world through a different lens.
It's not a short flight as well, right? Isn't it like 7 hours?
Yeah. Oh no, it's not that. I was in California at the time, so no, it wasn't that far. But yeah, long story short, I really feel strongly that getting out of the U.S. and traveling internationally was, what was the hockey stick for me. That was a change. I moved here when I was 32. So visited when I was 31, moved a month later. So big year for me in my life. Before that, I had spent like a long summer in Italy. That was kind of the moment where I realized social media was going to take off.
Really?
Yeah, I dropped out of college basically. I'd always kind of part-time gone in my 20s, but I'd stopped going full-time about 23 years old. I figured gave it 5 years. I was starting businesses. Yeah. Maybe college isn't for me.
Okay. What was it that you said that sparked? What made you think that social media was going to be a thing?
So I'd moved home. I'd been living in California. I moved home, and one of my parents passed away, and I kind of was getting nudges from my family, like, "Hey, why don't you finish your degree? This could be something pretty cool for you." And I had some savings, and they said the magic words, "We'll help you out. Like, we'll buy you a flight or something."
You were in Florida then?
I was in Florida. Okay. Yeah, I was living in California. I moved back to Florida, and so of course I'd always had my eyes set on Italy, and so I moved to Italy for the summer, like first week of May.
Whereabouts?
Florence, and could not have been a stronger euro to the dollar. So instantly felt probably the brokest I'd ever felt in my adult life, despite having some savings. And yeah, I was surrounded with a bunch of folks finishing their university degrees, 21, 22-year-olds. And this was like their last summer before going into the real world. And I had been in the real world, and every single one of them was, I don't want to say addicted, but just completely obsessed with Facebook and social media. And I had been dabbling as a marketer. I had built a couple real estate companies. I'd done a turnaround, and I had been the first employee of a real estate company in Florida. Yeah. And I really understood marketing. I had spent at that time probably millions of dollars doing what was early days of SEO, pay-per-click. I had spent millions of dollars on out-of-home. I knew how to drive leads. I knew how to build a funnel. Yeah. A lot of it was what we would call DR, direct response. Yeah. So it was 1-800 numbers, and we would buy bespoke websites, and very 2000s. Exactly to be able to see what the ROI was. And I had the BlackBerry Globe World Traveler, and I had
package.
the 0.001 Facebook
with
on
BBM.
it. Yeah, and it hit me like a week into that trip, like, wow, if Facebook actually cracks the code, this will be, in my mind, the naive way I saw it was, this will be the most valuable mobile ad network in the world. And so if someone's building the most valuable mobile ad network in the world, I could be part of that. I could be part of the creative. I could be part of that kind of media strategy, the media buying.
Okay.
And so at the end of the summer, I applied to 2 friends I knew, one friend in New York for a media company there, and one friend at Disney. And Disney gave me an interview. And I remember doing the interview from my mom's house in Florida. I caught the swine flu that summer. And so, I flew with it, which was really dumb. And so I was sitting upstairs reading like the Pixar story and like cramming Disney movies for the interview, and they were like, "Hey, this is really good. We'd like you to come out for an interview." And so, a year to the day I left LA to move back to try to be with one of my parents who ended up passing away. I moved back to California, new job, new career, new focus at Disney.
Nice. What were you doing?
So
That's the dream.
It really was, and I got lucky in a few ways. I got lucky because Disney had acquired a bunch of businesses the summer before, and only a few were remaining, and this was one of the few that remained. So you could tell they knew how to play the politics at Disney. You could tell they kind of were built for that corporate life. They had a good leadership team. They had hired a bunch of people, but their bet was that there's going to be 100 YouTubes, and so they need to create syndication software to syndicate videos to all YouTubes. And they were really talented folks, fantastic engineers, great leaders, but in that 12 months, everything started rapidly consolidating around YouTube, Daily Motion and a few other players.
Yeah.
And the platforms really became the play. And I had been focused on doing meetups before I left for Florida for that year. So I was doing meetups with Twitter folks in LA, Orange County. I was doing Tumblr meetups. And yeah, so they were kind of like, oh, this is interesting. And I was a brick and mortar marketer. So I knew just enough about the platforms and I had good marketing fundamentals. And they said, hey, help us build out the social media team here. And that ended up becoming kind of the inception of the social team at Disney.
Okay. All right. And how was life growing up in Florida before that as a kid?
Pretty idyllic.
Yeah.
Florida in the 80s. You know, a lot of people, when I left Florida, I didn't realize how people viewed Florida. That was kind of an eye-opener moving to California and saying like, yeah, I'm born and raised in Florida, like 6th, 7th generation Floridian. They'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, what are you talking about?
What is the thing that they say about Florida then?
I honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's the
I thought it was just where old people went to retire.
There's that.
With the taxes.
There's that. It's a huge state. So first of all, like, old folks aren't retiring in the big cities. In fact, if you're in a big city, you will know if you are stuck behind a retiree in traffic immediately. But a lot of the things that people talk about are like the Florida man and, you know, the impression of
things like that.
You got it.
Okay.
But the bottom line is it was an idyllic childhood.
Okay.
I lived in a small, big city, Tampa, Florida. Depending on how you slice it, the 12th or 13th or 15th largest city in the United States.
Okay.
So, but, you know, we were in North Tampa. It was a small town. So I stayed there into university as well. I went to the University of South Florida in Tampa.
Siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger brother.
Yeah. Just you and your younger brother?
Yeah.
And your parents?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And both me and my brother are entrepreneurs. So that's been a really interesting journey to be able to share with them.
Competitive?
No, not at all.
No?
No.
You only do better than you do.
I'm 7 years older than him. So it's like, you know, there were times growing up, I was more of a parent than a brother.
Okay. The entrepreneurship, does that come from your mom or your dad?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely our worldview. My mom was a social worker. My dad was a school teacher. So probably neither of them per se. But it was definitely our worldview. And I think for us, you know, we started this conversation by talking about AI, but I think for both me and my brother, we both are really curious about how stuff works.
Okay.
And people who are inherently curious and not cynical
find solutions.
They get options. Things just kind of present themselves. Yeah, because they can see solutions, they can see opportunities, and they just connect dots in a different way than other people. And so, you know, I think when I started, it was a very different world. He got to start his entrepreneurial journey at a younger age. And I think that was
seen from you, learned from you.
Exactly. And I think he also had a different approach. He works in F&B and him and his wife own a restaurant, and it's been a phenomenal journey for him. But I think we both get to see kind of through each other's eyes, like the benefits of having professional services versus, you know, a restaurant, what that's like and how to manage that and what it takes from you and what you have to give to it to be successful. And
would you say your dad was like your role model or when you were growing up?
I think my parents, all my parents would have been a role model, including my stepmom. I mean, I think in some ways it's an interesting way to view the world. I don't think you're sitting back and you're like, I want to be like them when I grow up. I think you're just saying like, I think they gave me enough freedom so that I could be me. I never had a conversation with my dad. My dad really wanted me. My dad worked before he was a school teacher, he worked in tech. And so he worked for Digital Equipment.
Really?
Which was one of the largest tech companies in the 80s and early 90s in North America. It was one of the first venture-backed companies. It's a really, really famous story out of Boston. And I think for me, seeing his journey, I saw a lot of the benefits of traveling, closing big deals, working with other smart people and being ambitious. But I also saw a lot of the downside. You know, there was definitely times where,
such as,
you know, Sunday night, I definitely remember really young taking a bath before bed and him popping in and saying, all right, I'll see you later. And then I'd see him like Friday afternoon, like he had just landed
on the road
and he was dead tired. And then like Saturday he'd wake up, I'd try to see him. And then Sunday, there were like years of that where 30, 40 weeks a year.
He was on the road.
He was on the road. When my parents split in the early 90s, he actually paid his divorce attorney with his air miles. He had that many air miles.
Right.
That's a true story.
Okay.
So I think for him, the pendulum swinging was, okay, I want to be around these guys. I want to do something I believe in. And that became going back to what he loved the most, which was teaching. And he became a school teacher.
So when they got divorced, he became a school teacher.
Yeah.
And he stayed home. And did you live with him?
No, he didn't stay home, but he was around.
No. Did you live with your mom or your dad when they got divorced?
My mom, yeah. Pretty common.
And what was he teaching in school?
So he was mostly trained in English literature, but he ended up, as you do before you get placed, especially for people with more advanced degrees, they try to have you sub and they try to have you go around and check out a few schools to see what you like. And he actually got really passionate about middle school.
Okay.
And he ended up leading a program that did dropout prevention for middle schoolers.
Okay.
And it was a really, really interesting thing that they realized between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. That was kind of a really crucial moment in a child's life, an at-risk child.
Gotcha.
And so he would actually stay with the class all 3 years instead of them getting a new teacher each year, with the goal of getting into high school. And it was a really amazing thing to watch this guy who had been, wearing $1,000 suits and flying around the world and closing $1 million deals to sit there and like get down on one knee and help a 13-year-old
get through
that has like, first or second grade literacy to help them get scaled up so they can go, from 7th to 8th grade or what have you.
Did him being on the road and then making the change affect you in terms of how you live your life in terms of work-life balance? Because you have a very good work-life balance now, right? That's what you strive for.
I think in general, the children of kind of like baby boomers are having, especially our age demographic, we're like these zennials, right? So we're Gen X and we're millennial, like right on the edge.
Yeah.
And so I can sit down and have a 2-hour conversation with a baby boomer, or even the greatest generation, World War II vets on a bus stop, no problem.
Yeah.
Thousands of things in common, hundreds of songs. Or I could sit down and talk to somebody who's Gen Z, and I'm in that interoperable spot.
You can because the Gen Zs, we're not there yet. They use words I don't understand.
Oh yeah, maybe the words are tricky, but I feel very comfortable between both those things, and I think for me it was definitely a journey of self-discovery, because in my 20s I had it was work hard, play hard. Yeah. And in my 30s I definitely started seeing like what I thought success could look like. I started seeing
Which is what?
I think being able to have a job and career that you believe in, working with people that you value and that value you, and being able to go home to folks that you love and that love you and want to be with you. And the founder of Kinko's has this great quote where he's like, success in retirement is your kids wanting to hang out with you. Your kids want to hang out with you. And so like, what type of world and life do I need to build now? What impact do I need to make on my kids today in order to get that? And I started connecting the dots, and I wasn't going to get there. I was not going to get there. The first 2-3 years of starting LMTD, I was key man on every contract by name, right? Something breaks, they call me. The buck stopped with me. And those were some of the most lucrative times. But I looked back and I took my eye off finances. I made some terrible decisions and trusted folks inappropriately, folks that weren't ready or qualified to do stuff financially. I trusted them. I ran away from things I didn't understand rather than try to embrace things I don't understand. And I didn't double down on what I was really, really good at, which was coaching and managing people and recruiting people and trusting people. So I had to kind of really realign after year 2, 3 in the business, and year 4, 5, 6, that was where I think a lot of my personal growth was. I ended up getting married around that time. I ended up starting a family around that time. Okay. No coincidence.
You have any regrets?
I think I've been really lucky to live a life where I don't see a lot of room for regret. Even the things that didn't work out, I really understand, or I can intellectualize why they didn't work out. I'm not justifying suffering. I'm not justifying something that didn't go my way and hurt me or cost me money. But I definitely understand the role it played in the person I am today, and I'm okay with it.
Okay. It's like, well, it was like a big deal or something, a big event that you wish could have happened and didn't go.
I mean, most of the time, those things you can't control.
Okay.
So to take it like down a personal path, like my oldest has special needs. She's 9. Okay. She was born with genetic epilepsy.
What does that mean exactly? Sorry, I'm not familiar.
So there's kind of a few ways. Epilepsy generally means seizures. Now, a lot of people see seizures as a grand mal seizure or a tonic-clonic seizure. And
Because
things
of
like
light
that.
sometimes or noises.
I'll walk you through it.
Okay.
So, but seizures can be an absent seizure. So you'll see babies that just start staring off into nothing and then they come back and they're startled. That could be a seizure. There's lots of different types of seizures, and it is a neurological phenomenon generally. It can have other aspects of the body can impact it, but I'll walk you through it. So basically you've got like genetic seizures, you've got structural abnormalities that cause seizures, and then you've got dietary, nutritional aspects that can cause seizures, and also some environmental stuff. Like a lot of young kids are really susceptible to heat, and if they get too hot, they can have seizures.
Okay.
Some of those are environmental. You can quickly solve those. Some of those with a blood test, you can see like, hey, you're not metabolizing blood sugar, or some people that are have rare forms of diabetes can have a blood sugar crash. They can get a seizure, right? Okay. Those are kind of acutely solved in one-off ways. Yeah. People with structural abnormalities, if light flashes a certain way, they can have a seizure. Now they've got some different operations, so you can go in and do a hemispherectomy, so you can separate the brain, or you can remove parts of the brain, and it can solve the problem. Yeah, it's pretty crazy what you can do. For my daughter, she has one letter in one gene that is switched, and because of that switch, she has seizures, and she's had them since birth. And so basically, the body works in a really elegant way. It's got at a cellular level all of these different channels that run all over your body, and they go from your blood and your gut and your organs up to your brain to say, hey, everything's okay. And in these areas, they're channelopathies. So you've got like proteins being measured, sodium's being measured, sugar's being measured, all these things in real time. And it's just a really simple message. Like, do we have enough sugar? We've got enough sugar. And they're really small. Again, they're cellular because they get past the blood-brain barrier just to tell the brain everything's okay. In her sodium channel, the second alpha subunit of the sodium channel, one letter is changed.
That's it.
That's it. And that controls excitability. So you got to think of sodium like in a car battery. You have salt water. That allows the electrons to pass through the car battery. We have sodium channels in our body that control our excitability or not. They allow us to get excited, or they allow us to relax. And we learn that over years of our life and the way our brains developed. So as the brainstem builds, different ways that we control excitability change in our brain and our body. And so for her, she's just been hyper excitable to a point of seizures from birth.
Sorry, okay. It's
a lot.
Yeah.
So we didn't know. I think that's the first question people ask. When did you know?
Yeah.
We didn't. We honestly thought that maybe she had something going on. Gas or little baby things. They kept us in the hospital, but she didn't need, compressors or anything. From birth, my friend, from birth. We have pictures in her first week of life, and we're holding her. Our close friends are holding her for the first time. She's having a seizure. We have no idea. She's having a seizure.
Doctors couldn't tell you?
They said she was doing a blinking with her eye. That was the first thing. They said, just have it checked out. It's probably nothing. And then slowly over time, it became more and more apparent. We had a hospital here in the UAE completely misdiagnosed her, said that it's MERS. Said, oh, we didn't give her any medicine. Like they gave her loads of medicine. I mean, like the journey to get to the diagnosis, we had to get on a plane. We had to get approval from Emirates, thank God. An amazing airline, amazing people. They approved us flying with an Emirati doctor. She volunteered her nights and weekends. We flew to New York in order to get a diagnosis.
Really?
Swear.
And she's how old?
She's 9.
How does that affect her quality of life? How do you manage it? Or if she's having seizures all the time?
So if anybody knows former Prime Minister David Cameron, his son had Ohtahara. That's probably phenotypically or categorically the similar profile to my daughter's epilepsy. And I believe his son passed away at 5 or 6. So
5 or 6? Is that the...
So I don't know. I don't know what it is. We've heard things, we've been told things. But for us, we literally manage this whole process like it's an extension of who we are. And I have to tell you, I sat in the hospital, waiting for this baby to come. I was sideways. I was an entrepreneur. I ran my business. I didn't feel appreciated. I didn't feel rewarded. I felt super taken advantage of by my clients. I was literally in the middle of a pitch. We did a pitch from the hospital room. Obviously, I didn't know she was sick at the time. And a client that we had done a ton of work for basically said, we're going to go a different direction. They took all of our ideas. They took all of our IP. I'm sitting there at my lowest point saying, why did I do this? Why did I do this? I could have just gone and worked for Facebook. I could have just gone and worked for any of the platforms. I mean, I literally a week later realized I have the freedom. I have the flexibility. I can go all in. I can help this child. I can be there for my wife. And that journey, the last 9 years, I mean, we were within 2 weeks, we were on a plane. And within 5 weeks, she was diagnosed with SCN2A. At that time, I'm pretty sure it was the earliest diagnosis of the disease ever. So all of those things that made me a crazy entrepreneur, all those things that made me borderline unemployable, I found the guy who we thought she had this disease. I called him at his house in New York, 5 a.m. He's like, it's probably not this, but you should come to New York Presbyterian anyway. She sounds like a very sweet girl and we'll take care of her. That's how we got into New York.
Found a way.
We just hustled and found a way. Even then, the hospital called me and they said, we need a $500,000 deposit. $500,000 deposit. Yeah.
For what?
They said we were an overseas patient. Now, they didn't know I had lived in New York. They didn't know I had a New York State driver's license.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have to put 500.
No. So I asked to speak to the manager. Oh, yeah. My wife's crying. My mother-in-law was in town. She's crying. My mom is freaking out. How are we going to do this? It's $500,000. Yeah. I mean, would have completely bankrupted me, the business, everything. I picked up the phone. I said, I'd like to speak to your manager. And I said, hi, I'm Will Hutson. Hi, Will. We're looking forward to see you. When do you think you can make the wire? Oh. I have a problem with that. Well, this is how we work. And if I take my driver's license out and I just start reading the letters. And he goes, I'm sorry. I don't understand what you're doing. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading my New York State driver's license to you. I'm a New York State resident. I'm going to fly there. I'm going to go into your ER and you are going to admit me. Give me 1 second, Will. We'll take a $5,000 deposit. That's fine.
Damn.
Yeah. And it was a situation like that again and again and again. Getting the flight with Emirates, they said, no, she can't fly. She's having seizures. They came back a day later. There was a couple local families that made calls for us. And a day later, we had a doctor and we were on a plane.
I don't know how you have the strength. Because I've gone to the doctors when my son had a temperature.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to bite their head off because the guy is telling me the prescription hasn't been approved yet because Panadol's not approved on the prescription. And I'm like, I don't need prescription for Panadol. I can buy that. Like I because when you get to that stage, when your kid is not, like sick, you get, you know.
I'm with you. So I'm going to tell you something.
Yeah.
The courage that we get, first of all, everything is relative. So that feeling you have, unfortunately to me, that's her hips dislocated. We have to go in and get Botox. Yeah, but that's the same.
What do you mean?
Both her hips are dislocated.
From the seizures?
It's a combination. One, she can't walk. We have to do lots of things from an orthotics perspective and build things for her feet to keep developing, for her hips to keep developing, and we do that. But it's natural if you're not putting pressure on your hip and femur to make sure it gets into the socket. You ever seen the way a femur's kind of offset from a hip?
Yeah.
Hers are straight up and down because they haven't kind of gotten saddled in.
Okay.
They don't have that kind of.
There's no pressure into it.
Correct. So what happens is that the femur starts to float, and then at some point it disconnects. And so, it was a really tough her one hip came out about 4 years ago, and her other hip is now out from February, March. And that was a really tough, or December. And we've had to do Botox twice now on the hip. But now she's okay. Now that the hips are out, now we actually have balance. It's a really strange thing how to treat and manage chronic diseases. But that's my point. That's, for me, your Tylenol and fever. So it's all relative. It is. No, it really is. And I'm not justifying.
I think your threshold is much higher than mine.
But if I go onto a production set with you tomorrow, the things that are going to stress you out on a production set are going to be like here. The things that stress me out on a production set are here. The environments and the things that we are prepared for in this life are completely relative to our experiences. Yeah. And so me having been an entrepreneur, even though a week before she was born, I was like, what have I done? Yeah. I'm looking back. I have friends at Facebook that were like, all you had to do was like take this job and you would have gotten salary. You would have gotten this, you would have gotten stock. I'm watching the share price of Meta.
Yeah, you also would be out of a job a couple of years ago.
I would have been out of a job within 6 months. Now, that said, we do know some other special needs families that worked with a lot of the platforms and they made it work. Yeah. But their kids had different profiles to Emory. I mean, I spent 2.5 months in the hospital in New York. My wife spent 3 months. And so it's incredible. She's incredible. Emory's incredible. She's the hero, by the way. And so I want to be really, really clear here. I was even like, why am I here? Why am I in the Middle East? I've got my wife. I've got my kid. Why? Maybe I just stay. I don't know if people see the power in the way the UAE embraces people of determination. Yeah. In the way they go out of their way to say, you're good. You're with us. I remember the first time we parked in a handicap space. I'm not going to say where they're from, but some guys tried to park next to us at Mall of Emirates, and we saw them getting their snowboards out in a handicap space, and we're unloading her wheelchair. And they made a remark, laughing. And it was one of the hardest moments for me as like a person. That was 8 years ago. Today, 10 out of 10 out of 10. Yeah. I know I can literally pick up the phone, call the police, escalate to mall security. Yeah. No issue. Those guys are banned from the mall. Those guys...
I would have banned them from the mall.
You would have. I think you would have banned them from the world.
I would have banned them I would have showed them what the snowboard
can do. Yeah. So I think, first of all, what we didn't realize is there was a sea change at place when Emory was born. We also didn't know she's Emory of the Emirates. She was born in the Emirates. We didn't connect that, but a lot of my local friends were like, "Oh, Emory, like Emirates," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't think about that. It's my dad's name, and we gave it to her." So I think the first thing happened was that. I think the second thing that happened, which is just transformational, is there was a real community being built in the UAE for rare disease. Yeah. There were not dozens, hundreds, thousands of families getting together. And so my wife and a few other moms have worked together to build a really great movement around Rare Disease Day. During COVID, they managed to, because they couldn't do the parade that they normally do, they managed to light up Burj Khalifa. During Expo, they had a huge Rare Disease Day event at the Wassel Dome in Expo. So I didn't think that we would be part of something so much bigger and so much more fulfilling. When you're a parent, you have these expectations of your kid playing a sport and going and meeting other parents, or your kid going to schools. I always made the joke, oh, she's Emory, maybe she'll go to Emory. Now I think about like her going to an epilepsy conference to see other kids with her disease. Like for me, that's like the sleepaway camp. You know, everything shifts, and there's this huge community of people that are really trying to cure this. I got a chance to join the global board of directors for a company, or rather an organization called Families SCN2A. And so I've served on the board there for 7 years. And
so they are actively working on cures, possibly.
When we first got involved, there was maybe 1 or 2 drug targets. I wouldn't even say trials, just things, hey, this might work. I think actively today we have 23 different kind of pathways for, cures or...
Do you think that AI is a way that can help in any way, or is it too far-fetched to think that?
So I think there's a few things. I think when you look at drug development, one of the best things you can do is to cast a wide net. And so the U.S. is the epicenter of drug development in the world. And they've got a really good protocol for orphan drugs.
What's an orphan drug? Sorry.
So what they want to do is they want to go after drugs. Like, let's say there's an Alzheimer's drug that's created. Or a heart disease drug that's created. Oftentimes companies compete, right, to get it done. And one company will win. It's got the best efficacy. It works 60, 70, 80% of the time. But there's a drug that works 40 or 50% of the time. But a lot of those drugs work on other parts of the body. So all of these other drugs, not hundreds of millions, but tens of billions of dollars of investment, and fully FDA approved drugs, they just weren't the best for heart disease or the best for Alzheimer's, can be used for other diseases. And so AI can go through and look at all of the efficacy on these, not dozens, but hundreds of FDA approved drugs that are just sitting on the shelf.
And see what it...
Correct. And we're seeing this right now. There's, do you remember in the 90s, there was a weight loss drug called FinFin?
No.
You don't remember this?
No.
It had some side effects with certain people where it would affect their heart. It's being repackaged and it's being dosed lower. The drug is called fenfluramine, and they're giving it to certain kids with autism and seizures.
Really?
That's working really well for them.
FinFin?
Yeah, fenfluramine.
Fenfluramine.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, not to be... But that's
a good example of an orphan drug, being repurposed.
But that's how Viagra was found,
100%.
right? It was supposed to be blood pressure medicine, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they were like, it doesn't work. It's not as working as effective as it's supposed to be, but it's...
That's why, I've become a real believer in process. I used to be really big into outcomes. And you realize if you're tackling a really big problem, being outcome driven, you're going to look like this. It's going to be feast or famine. Now, if you're a smaller business or you have smaller goals, you can be outcome driven. But if you're process driven, your outcomes will slowly improve over time. And you will know that the North Star, this process, waking up a certain way, working with certain people, organizing a team a certain way, benchmarking what they do, checking in, holding each other accountable, saying, even if we have a slow week, we're going to have a team meeting. Having that sort of accountability, it works across the board. And I've seen a lot of that in drug development as they go back again and again and again. So to your point, yes, AI is an incredible opportunity to go back and to not only look at orphan drugs and existing compounds, but even take those and say, okay, take all the orphan drugs that target sodium channel. Now, I want you to find ways with those drugs, with existing compounds that are FDA approved. So what am I doing? I'm saying take drugs that are FDA approved but not often used, and take the other 10, 15, 20 main compounds that the FDA approves, and find ways to put those together to target, SCN2A. That could be something AI helps tremendously, and that creates what they like to call a higher throughput of testing and measuring. AI is also helpful when you create animal models. So a big part of drug testing is getting animals that are the right disease profile, so you know if the drug works or not. It's a huge deal, and all of this benefits children dramatically.
Would that be your biggest wish for AI in the future to help?
I think it's the lowest hanging fruit, and that's why I caution everybody when they say AI is this terrible thing. I make the parallel with nuclear energy. We really mismanaged nuclear, and we really looked at it through the wrong lens. I think we risk doing the same thing with AI. And there's a real opportunity with AI for us to have real results. Look, imagine if you went to a hospital and it felt more like a hotel. Imagine if there wasn't 20 doctors per floor, there was one doctor per floor, right? That's kind of the world with AI-powered drug delivery, AI-powered drug development. And that's what a lot of people have been talking about for years, called precision medicine. I've been out of the U.S. for 13 years now. And so I don't think, I'm not a hammer, everything looks like a nail. In the U.S., there's a drug for everything. And we look at the obesity, we look at the mortality rate in the U.S., we look at all these other things. We know that down the middle, the way medicine's being delivered to Americans and North Americans is been progressively worse. But on the edges, in rare disease development, in really specific targeted environments, the U.S. is still the epicenter of drug development, and I still think they can lead the way in this. So I hope they do. But I'm not under any illusion that in general, like health, safety, wellness, in general has to change. And there's diet and lifestyle and all these other things that impact
Different
that.
factors as well.
It's not just going to be like, boom, I'm going to take a miracle pill and I can do whatever I want.
Because I have one child, my wife and I have one child, and we're a bit older, and we're, figure having a second child, they have that stupid terminology, like they call it a geriatric birth or something like that, which is insane because, I like...
As a marketing and agency guy, really bad branding.
Really bad branding. Like I think it's like a geriatric pregnancy or something like that. Yeah. So we didn't have a second child because we figured we're in our 40s, we're not going to, for whatever reason, and we were also around COVID. Going through what you did with your first child, what gave you the strength to have a second and then a third?
Yeah, I think...
And I'm sorry I'm not saying that you shouldn't. It's my insecurity saying that.
Well, we already did. So you don't have to apologize. It's done. I think for me, it was a very different journey than for my wife. And there was a lot of fear and trepidation. We did a lot of research. We talked to a genetic counselor. The main way that her disease manifested was what they called de novo. So it was not a familial mutation. It wasn't something that she got, like a recessive gene from me or a recessive gene from her. So I think I had a lot of confidence. I'm a very curious person. And so I was really focused on like figuring this out and understanding the disease profile and digging deep. And, within a few months of her being born, I was talking to David Liu, one of the two people who basically co-discovered CRISPR. And, I was trading emails with him regularly. And like, I was just doing everything I could to educate myself. And I think for her, she was very focused. And as she is, she's like the, main caretaker, primary caregiver of Emery. So I think she was very focused on it not happening again. And then everything was uneventful with our second. With our third, there were a few little things that we had to rule out. And those were some scary weeks, but we ruled everything out and everything was fine. And he's great. And so having the rest of our kids, and kind of family planning from there, I do think in the next couple of years that we will probably, stop thinking about it, close that door. And there's, some steps that you can take to do that. But in general, I think, we know a lot more about our genes and we know a lot more. We've both had our genetic testing done. And so we can kind of look with open eyes into what that looks like for our lives and who we are. And we took that step confidently.
Yeah, you guys are very, very good together. Very lucky to have each other.
We're a great team. I think that's, one of the biggest things you can look for in a partner. It's great to be attracted. It's great to be excited to be with them. But if you're getting married, you really need to think about who you're marrying, because you're marrying your in-laws as well and your extended family. And then how do you fit as a team? And we're both really lucky. She loves my extended family. I love her extended family. I love spending time in Canada with them. They're great. And
whereabouts in Canada?
In Ontario. Yeah.
Nice and cold.
Yeah. It gets pretty hot in the summer.
Okay, fair enough.
No, it's I love. I got another brother out of this. Her older brother is my age, and he's amazing. He's also a restaurateur, entrepreneur, like my brother.
Okay.
So when the three of us get together, it's pretty hilarious. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey on that side. But being a good team, I think everybody who saw us knew we are a good team. We work really well together, and that's what being a parent really brings out of you. And so I think with the rest of the kids, it's been fairly straightforward, although it does have different challenges. When kids can talk back to you, when kids sleep, or when they can stand above you when you're in bed sleeping and freak you out in the middle of the night. A little bit different than when you have a kid that just kind of, has a pretty relaxed attitude about sleeping. Emery loves to sleep, which is amazing. The other two are a little bit wild, but no, it's been great.
It's a nice balance then.
It absolutely balances it out. And actually, the funny thing is they are phenomenal around her. We when they're babies, we put them with her a lot, and they can kind of sense her energy. It's really cool. It's a really, really cool thing.
Builds a bond.
They have a very good bond. And my wife is always trying to get the kids to play around Emery. She really wants a house full of children and noise, and she thinks it's great for her development. Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. We like to wrap up with a wild card question.
Okay.
So in these tins, there is a question. You just have to choose the tin. And I will, you can choose the twin as well if you like.
Sure.
I will choose anyway, choose a tin. I'll read out the question.
Okay, the blue one on the right.
Okay. Let's see here. Is this one? Okay. Is there a superpower or skill you would like to have, and why?
That I'd like to have?
Yeah, and why?
I really dislike exercising. I love playing sports, but I wish I could just be that guy that's like, hey, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. I'm getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go exercise by myself in the heat for 45 minutes or 60. That is a superpower, man. You are sadistic, crazy people. I don't know how you do that. You just have a switch where you flip it off, like, oh, if I could do that, I'd just be shredded. I'd be an amazing. I have other superpowers. That ain't it, my man.
It's called, first of all, I'm not shredded.
Yeah.
But it's called having a wife who's a 5th-degree black belt in karate.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And she wakes up, she's like, did you train today? I'm like, no. And she's like, did you train today? Wow. And then the second time she asks, it means,
okay,
go and train.
Okay, go and train.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to, if you're listening, don't do that, Jamie. The answer is no. I didn't train today. I love cooking. I love eating.
Yeah, big time.
I wish that got me skinny. I mean, maybe there will be an AI powered pill in the future that
This is the thing. I don't understand why everything that tastes good makes us fat. Like if kale tasted good, I'd be skinny as.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
What's your favorite food though?
I would probably say I'm a carnivore. I really like cooking meats. All meat. Barbecue is great. I love barbecue. I miss good barbecue food. I think there's something really that cuts across lines, cultural lines, especially being from Florida. Everybody kind of makes fun of Florida barbecue.
Really?
Yeah, it's just because it doesn't have a big identity.
Okay.
Florida barbecue is everything.
It's not like ribs or it's just...
it's everything. Well, it's not dry rub or wet rub, or you've got everything. You've got some places that are more Texas style in Florida. You got Carolina style. You got obviously Alabama. You got white sauce. I mean, you got everything in Florida. It's just because it's such a melting pot. But I love that whole culture around.
What's your favorite thing on the barbecue though? Is it brisket or ribs or burgers or?
I think a perfectly cooked rack of ribs is about as good as it gets. It's rewarding. You're doing some work. It can be sweet and savory.
That is hard to find here.
It's hard to find.
There's one place that the Grand Grill does good ribs.
I'll have to check it out. I do good ribs.
You do? Oh, there you go. Okay, so there you go. I think that's our time, Will. Unless I have one question from the audience. Do you want the audience, before we go, is there anything you want the audience to know about you at all?
I just think, I know we got emotional a few times today, but...
Yeah. You said you weren't going to make me cry, but you did. You snuck that one in.
Look, I think despite being through some really tough situations, I think the fact that I've remained optimistic and curious, and the way my family views the world is one of hope and opportunity. And I think we're definitely, even though time and time again, I was kind of questioning, like, why am I in this spot? Why am I in this position? Time and time again, a door is opened, an opportunity is created that kind of shows me this is where you're supposed to be and this is why. And the amount of love and support that we've gotten in the UAE for a person of determination for our journey. You were saying, like, we don't get the Tylenol filled that's not even a weekly occurrence. That's a daily occurrence. They're always saying, like, we can't fill this prescription. That's no longer covered. You just got to kind of stay in the process and know that if you're there for a reason, and that there's something good on the other side of it. And that optimism has gotten us through some pretty heady stuff. And I know there's a lot right now in this region to be upset about, and there's a lot to be cynical about. But I kind of have hope that there's a lot of really good people making really good decisions, and we're all going to benefit from it.
Just on that one thing though, when that stuff happens, it's very easy to get you down. What keeps you motivated and keeps your head up? Because I can just lose it.
Look, I've said it a few times, but I think the battle in me, I like understanding things. I like learning about things. But the more information you have, you can go one of two ways. You can go towards cynicism or you can go towards curiosity. And that's kind of the battle I have within myself, is to not be cynical. Our kids' school is closing next year, and it's going to change the curriculum because the curriculum we're in is kind of creative, and it's an American style curriculum, and it's more profitable to have British style schools. I didn't think the school was that big of a deal. It closing hit me the next week. I'm at one of the larger banks. I've got 4 or 5 banks we work with, but one of the larger banks is the main bank we work with. They said your turnover has to be 100 million dirhams a year. Otherwise, we're going to unbank you. Okay, we're going to do 20 million dirhams next year, maybe 25. And they're like, it's not good enough. So they asked us to close the account by September 1st. A week later, a prescription wasn't filled. The cynicism is building. I understand the business decisions that are driving that. But as a person, my understanding of it can either make me curious or cynical. And I've got to embrace that curiosity. I've got to say, like, if I'm here for a reason. And so we've got 2 new banks that we're working with now, and they're great. And we've looked at 2 or 3 schools, and we're really excited about some of these other schools. And there's a bunch of friends that we didn't know that went to one of these schools. And now it's like, oh, wow, that'd be cool to go to school with them and see their families. And,
I love that.
Still haven't figured out the insurance, but.
I love that, though. If I'm here for a reason. Thank you, Will.